Elsewhere, the clouds spilling its way ever further south and east, which means it won't be as cold to take us into Wednesday morning as it has been to start this week, but still cold enough for a touch of frost across parts of East Anglia and the southeast of England. So here, a few places, bright start, but for most it's a cloudier picture as we move into Wednesday, with this rain slowly edging its way a little bit further eastwards with time. So turning wetter through Wednesday morning across parts of northern England, parts of Wales as well. That rain extends a bit further east through the day on Wednesday, so most places will see some rain before the day is out, but staying relatively mild.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's 6 o'clock, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight, dog whistle racism. That is what Suella Braverman has been accused of today. I mean, to be honest, she's always accused of that, isn't she? Let's face facts. However, tonight it relates to the grooming gangs. Is it racist to capture the ethnicity of people suspected of grooming children and sexually abusing them? Your thoughts? And did you see the absolute state of the goings-on in Dover at the weekend? Queues as long as your eye can see. What is to blame? The B word, of course. It's those pesky Brexiteers once again. Is it? Are we kind of burying our head in the sand now and denying the impacts of our decision? Or are people just too quick once again to blame it for everything? And when it comes to the state Thank you very much. I want you as far away as possible from my business and from anything, really, unless you actually have to be involved. But Sadiq Khan has got other ideas. He wants rent controls. This is something that's been called for many times, but again today. Don't worry about London, think about the whole country. Is that the answer to the housing crisis? Landlords being dictated to by councillors, mayors, whatever you want to call it, the amount of rent that they can charge. I certainly think not, but what do you reckon? We'll get into all of that and more, but before we do so, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you and good evening to you. The top story on GB News tonight. The man who murdered Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool has been sentenced today to life in prison and will serve a minimum term of 42 years. Thomas Cashman shot the 9-year-old girl as he chased a convicted drug dealer into her home in August last year. The 34-year-old refused to appear in the dock to hear victim impact statements or his sentencing. Outside the court, the schoolgirl's mother, Cheryl Corbell, said her family has already started their life sentence, having to spend the rest of their lives without Olivia.
Liv was the light of our lives, a sassy, chatty girl who never ran out of energy. She was a character. She was my baby, and she had amazing qualities and knew what she wanted in life. Everyone adored her. She was the baby of our family and my little love, my shadow. Now everything we do and everywhere we go is a constant reminder that she is not there with us. All that promise for her future so cruelly taken away.
An emotional Cheryl Corbell there speaking outside Manchester Crown Court a short time ago. Well, Detective Superintendent Mark Baker said he hopes the sentence will act as a deterrent to others.
I hope that the sentence of 42 years given to Thomas Cashman today will act as a deterrent for anyone who thinks of picking up a gun and putting our communities at risk through their reckless behaviour. This has been a challenging, complex and emotional inquiry. I want to thank and praise the commitment, dedication and sheer determination of the investigation team as they pursued the truth.
Well, in other news today, the brother of the television presenter Philip Schofield has been found guilty of sexually abusing a teenage boy. Timothy Schofield was charged with 11 offences involving a child between October 2016 and October 2019. The 54-year-old has been remanded in custody and will be sentenced next month. Reacting to the verdict, Philip Schofield said, "As far as I'm concerned, I no longer have a brother." And the Prime Minister has announced a new task force today to crack down on grooming gangs. Speaking on a visit to Rochdale, Rishi Sunak said the measures aim to prevent victims and whistleblowers from being ignored by the authorities because of cultural sensitivities or political correctness. That's after the Home Secretary singled out British Pakistani men as a particular concern. Critics say excessively focusing on race could create new blind spots when tackling child abuse. But speaking exclusively to GB News, Suella Braverman says her comments on Pakistani men were based on local reviews and reports.
It's not racist to tell the truth about what has been going on here in Rochdale or in Rotherham or in Telford. Local reviews and reports have confirmed that the grooming gangs scandal that has gone on here has been perpetrated by largely British Pakistani men. Now, it's important not to demonise a whole community, and the vast majority of British Pakistanis are law-abiding and straightforward people.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the government has been turning a blind eye to the problem.
I want a government that recognises the full response that's needed here, and a government that really has been behind the curve now for a decade. And, you know, very many of the measures I was calling for 10 years ago, the government still hasn't done. And it's not tackling online issues. So there's big gaps in something which is 10 years too late. But look, we'll work with anybody to improve the situation.
Teachers in England will go on strike for another 2 days next term after rejecting the latest government pay offer. They'll walk out on the 27th of April and the 2nd of May. 98% of NEU members voted against what they described as an insulting offer of a £1,000 one-off payment plus an average rise of 4.5% for the next year. The NEU's General Secretary, Mary Boosted, appealed to the Education Secretary to negotiate a much better deal. And lastly, Finland will officially become a member of NATO tomorrow, bringing an end to decades of neutrality. Turkey's parliament ratified the move, clearing the way for the country to join the military alliance. Both Sweden and Finland applied to join NATO last May after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Sweden's bid continues to be blocked by Turkey and Hungary, but the head of NATO says Finland's membership will be beneficial to both. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, the People's Channel. Time for Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, I'm Michelle Dewbs and I'm keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got my panel, Joe Phillips, a political commentator, and Ben Habib, the CEO of First Property Group and a member of Reform Party. And I suggest you take a long, hard look at Mr Habib, because this might be the last time you ever see him. Because he was set a very simple task this time last week. I was explaining he's the housewife's favourite on this show. You all love him, I know this. You tell me every night that you see him. But he told me he can't cook. So I set him a very simple target, a very simple task. In fact, it was one of the viewers that suggested it.
I know.
A fruit salad was what he had to do. And do you know what he's done, everybody? Turned up empty-handed. I mean, I don't know. Make of that what you will.
We ate it before we came into the studio.
We could have done.
But we didn't
I'm
work out
so
our
sorry.
cover story, did we?
I had it all planned, and then my mind went blank.
Well, I'm going to let you be the judge of that. What do you make to that? If someone says they're going to bring in a fruit salad and then just don't even bother, what shall I do? Just kick him out, let him finish the show, or what? Never bring him back again? What's the appropriate punishment for a non-showing of a fruit salad? I'm livid tonight. Anyway, get in touch. I bet you've a lot of people that you were the fan favourite. They've gone off you now, I bet. Anyway, get in touch with those about whatever you want tonight. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. You can tweet me at gbnews. I've got a lot coming up tonight. Grooming gangs. I want to talk to you about the mess at Dover at the weekend. Was that the fault of Brexit or not? One of my panellists nodding furiously. She definitely thinks it is. I don't think it is, and I suspect Ben Habib might think it's not either. But your thoughts on that? Also, as well, what did you think? Did you see that sentencing of Thomas Cashman earlier on for Olivia Platt-Corbell? It was great, wasn't it, to see victory being served, or justice being served to him. But I really disliked the fact that he didn't actually even go into the courtroom to face his sentence. I don't know how people can get away with that. You know, if it was down to me, I would have dragged him in that room, kicking and screaming, and I would have made him look at the family of that little girl and made him see and hear what his fate was going to be, rather than cowering away in a back room. Anyway, your thoughts on all of that. Let's get into our top story there, shall we? Rishi Sunak has announced a new plan to stamp out sex grooming gangs who've targeted young women and girls. A new task force is going to be formed, and it's going to involve specialist officers. Apparently, the PM has said that cultural sensitivity and political correctness should not stand in the way of targeting ethnic minorities. Let's be honest, we've seen this happen up and down the country now, haven't we? Labour have said that the proposals were, I quote, far too inadequate. Ben Habib, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think Suella Braverman is absolutely right not to be shamed into not calling out the Rotherham gang. Of course, the Rotherham gang is not on its own, but it is well documented that for many years the police didn't challenge them because of fears of accusations of racism. And this is where, I don't want to get drawn into a discussion on woke, but this is where woke is quite dangerous. You know, woke, as I've defined on this programme before, is the ostensible championing of minority rights at the exclusion and often the detriment of the majority. And we have politicians now who champion minority rights so sort of fervently. Sadiq Khan's a great example, where he has targets for minimum sort of racial levels in the Met Police, for example, which, if you put it the other way round, would be a minimum target for white police officers in the Met, which would be regarded as racist. But because we're so hijacked now with this desire to be seen to be inclusive, to be championing minority rights, I think the pendulum has swung too far. And certainly our judicial system, our law enforcement, the police and so on, need to be absolutely unashamed about who they challenge for crimes that are committed. And there shouldn't be even the slightest hint that they're not challenging Pakistani men in Rotherham because they're Pakistani, because they're fearful of being accused of being racist. So I applaud Suella Braverman for having the courage to come out and call this for what it is, at least as far as Rotherham is concerned, which was the suppression of the investigation of these people for fear of being called racist. And before I finish, this was very serious what happened in Rotherham. It was something that went on for 30 years, 1,400 children abused by taxi drivers predominantly, picking them up and, taking advantage of them. So Suella's right. She needs to call it out. But of course, that doesn't diminish from the importance of tackling the rest of the problem, which includes, white people as much as it does people of Pakistani origin and so on.
And by the way, I do want to make it clear, because I spoke to Maggie Oliver about this topic on my show not that long ago, and she really made it clear to me that this is not a historical thing that's, in yesteryear's memory. This is still in her mind. She has a foundation that looks after these people. She's getting reports of this pretty much daily when she was talking to me not that long ago. So it's very much a current thing. Anyway, Jo, your thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's to be welcomed. It is pretty much what the Labour Party proposed 10 years ago. It is not that far from what Theresa May proposed when she was Home Secretary and Priti Patel when she was Home Secretary. So, as we come up to the local elections, there's an awful lot of stuff. It's like one of those shops that's got a forever closing down sale. The government's coming out with headline-grabbing things. I think what's interesting is that if you go back to the Alexis J report into Rochdale and Rotherham, which was published last year, and she herself has welcomed this, the mandatory reporting is the key, I think, in this. Because don't forget, a lot of the girls, and they were predominantly girls who were groomed and abused so awfully in those cities, they were in care. So not only were they abused and nobody believed them, they were in the care of the local authority of the state.
Which is disgusting.
Which makes it even worse. So I think there's a whole load of issues here. There's no new money, or not that's been announced today. There's no new resources. So if this is just a question of moving things around, when you've got local authorities who are facing budget cuts, there are cuts to social services, you've got pressures on schools for all sorts of reasons, you've got a mistrust in the police, which we have discussed on this programme many times and has been amplified by the Casey report and other reports. And I think it's really important that Suella Braverman, who I am not a great fan of, as Ben knows, she doesn't use this as dog whistle.
It's very diplomatic, Jo.
Yeah.
I know, you should have heard.
I don't think this is dog whistle politics.
I think she should have prefaced whatever she said and made clear that she was talking about Rotherham and Rochdale, which we know to be a fact. Downing Street this afternoon, or Rishi Sunak, has actually slightly distanced himself because her comments have been seen and been used as a catch-all, and that is dangerous. And I think
that's because people have got it in for Suella Braverman. It's like she can't. It doesn't seem to be able to do anything without people saying, "Look at how racist
because
she
is." Doesn't stop and think.
No, she does. She's a very deep thinker. I don't think that's right.
Well,
she's had the courage,
to what she said about Brexit in a minute and Dover. I mean,
she.
But let me just tell you what Peter Wanless, who's the chief executive of the NSPCC. And again, he sort of welcomed this proposal, welcomed the report with all the caveats that we've talked about. But he says predators come from a large range of cultural backgrounds, and it's really important that we don't create other blind spots by raising the race issue. And I think that's the key to it, that if we all go down the path, and there will be some people who unthinkingly will go, ooh, you know, it's all Pakistani men, when we know factually that it tends to be young white men.
What she's done is debug the debate, because you weren't allowed to go there before she did what she did. And it's not just dog whistle politics. You know, some of what politicians do, obviously, before elections is. But the fact that the Secretary of State is prepared to say it is a big step forward.
But it's the mandatory reporting that makes it work, Ben, if it works, because it means that if you're a teacher or you're a care home worker or you're involved in social services or, you know, anything involved with children, you've got to report.
But there's no doubt that with Rotherham, the police were reluctant to take action for fear of being labelled as racist.
Yes.
And that is an unacceptable situation in our country.
And nobody disagrees with that.
You know, this plays into something else. I'm slightly digressing, but I think it's the same. You know, we celebrate multiculturalism as a country. We celebrate having all these different cultures in the country, which is great. But what we don't do well is homogenise and assimilate cultures. What we tend to do in this country with multiculturalism is to set up ghettos of different kinds of people. So if you go across the United Kingdom, you have ghettos of, you know, people from Pakistan, from India, from North Africa, wherever it might be. And that is not healthy. You know, underlying all of this...
It's a personal choice, though, because if I moved to a different country
you'd go
where there's a bunch of Northerners, I'd probably want to be near them because I've got loads in common and all that.
And where you can buy the food that you want for your cooking, Ben.
Cooking. But what you want in a society, in my view, is a strong social fabric. And if you're all broken up into different sort of minority groups without sharing values, without getting the best of each other, without assimilating, I think there's a real risk of this kind of thing happening. Because part of the problem with the Rotherham gangs was that they had a kind of antipathy to white girls. It was white girls who were targeted.
White girls in vulnerable
and what kind of society welcomes into their midst, into their bosom, if you like, an antipathetic form of multiculturalism? That is not something we should celebrate. That is something where multiculturalism has gone fundamentally wrong.
But you also have to, and again, I go back to Professor Alexis Jay's report last year, which was the independent inquiry into that abuse, and she used examples and made the point that, you know, this sort of grooming and abuse has been going on for centuries. She talked about the Catholic Church, she talked about the Anglican Church. Look at Jimmy Savile, how victims were not believed. And, you know, there was a white man who was held up as this great charity worker who was protected.
And in a sense, he got the same kind of protection,
precisely,
inadvertently, that these people got.
Exactly. So I think it's really important that, you know, the broad... I think we're in broad agreement, but this shouldn't become a race issue, because otherwise it occludes the very real...
But, Joe, it was a race issue.
It was, and it
They weren't being challenged because they were an ethnic minority. And that's where we've got to stop the language of woke. We've got to stop Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. We've got to debug the debate. You know, we've got to take things back to basics. Everyone is equal. It doesn't matter what colour you are, where you come from, what your religious beliefs are.
But the people in authority and the people who've got power to change things and get justice and seek justice, which we have seen.
But they're not doing that.
No,
you take Sadiq Khan, he's a great example.
Look at the Metropolitan Police.
He politicises racial differences. He inculcates division in London.
But then
he gets votes on the back of it, and that is deeply divisive.
You've got a report, you know, only last week or the week before, from Louise Casey talking about the Metropolitan Police being, you know, institutionally racist.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got a slight issue with the... I've got a slight issue. I mean, I think that there is no doubt, you know, misogyny and homophobia and all the rest of it that Casey concluded on. But I've got a real problem with saying the Met's institutionally racist. I've got a real issue with that. There were bad things that happened, but to lambast the whole institution, I think, is wrong.
One of the things that's coming through on this inbox as well is the hypocrisy of Labour. Bruce says this is just usual Labour hypocrisy. They're blaming government. These gangs have been mainly Labour-controlled councils. That's coming through thick and fast on the email. And what I found quite interesting today, I was looking at Simon Danchuk, the former Labour MP in Rochdale. He retweeted a clip from Yvette Cooper. She was basically saying that this government had failed to act. And he said, I'm directly quoting him, "The barefaced cheek of Labour here. I was warned off mentioning the ethnicity or religion of those in the Rochdale grooming gangs by senior Labour MPs. And," he says, "Labour councils suppressed intelligence on the grooming gangs to the detriment of the victims." So I found that quite an interesting insight earlier on, so you can make of that what you will. And to me, it's absolutely crucial that you're capturing people's ethnicity, race, religion, whatever you want to describe it as, particularly when that might have been a motivating factor for why people behave the way that they do, because I would say that there are some chaps out there that do, for whatever reason, see white women as very much less than them. So I absolutely applaud the capturing of that information myself. Keep your thoughts coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We are indeed the People's Channel, so we are all about you. Lots of people have asked me, don't fire Ben because of the fruit salad. They like you.
They're waiting outside with pineapples to throw.
I mean, there's so many puns you could have on a fruit salad.
I'll make the salad. Richard says, I say this every time, but Joe is the A-star of your A-lister panellists.
Who
That's
said
nice.
this?
Richard.
I love him, whoever he is.
There you go. Right, I am going to take a 2-minute break, let you gather your thoughts on the next topic, Brexit. Is that to blame for the goings-on at Dover? If you've missed the goings-on at Dover, where have you been? Long story short, the queue. Long story short, the queue was as long as the eye can see, and of course, Brexit has got the blame. Is this just a taste of things to come in post-Brexit Britain, or not? I'll see you in 2.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewbs, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dewbs and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewbs, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight here on GB News, Britain's news channel. I'm with you right till 7. As I said, Joe Phillips, the political commentator, keeps me company, as does Ben Habib, the CEO of First Property Group and a member of Reform Party. Lots of strong opinions coming in on that last topic about grooming gangs and whether or not it's dog whistle racism. To collect the ethnicity of people accused of such crimes or not. I'll be reading some of your thoughts out towards the end of the programme. Lots of people, Ben, again, asking me, please don't get rid of Ben, the fruit salads. Lots of ladies offering to give you cooking lessons.
Oh.
Things coming in that I better not read on national television.
Oh, my goodness.
So
we need to go after the watershed, I think.
Yeah, we'll do Tubes after dark and we'll tell Ben all of his feedback that I'm getting about him. Right, travellers at Dover, have you seen all this? So we're forced to queue for hours. I mean, it depends who you believe, quite frankly. Some people have been saying that they've been sat there for 24 hours, other people 12 hours, 18 hours. Anyway, make of it what you will. The point is there were very long queues indeed. Let's cut to the chase, right? I think you can all guess what's coming next. There was one thing, and it seemed to me that only one thing only got the blame, and that was Brexit. I'm going to cut straight to the chase because I suspect that Ben Habib might argue the case that it isn't Brexit. So I'll start with you because I suspect that you might have a different view, Joe.
Put it in context. The delays were not to car passengers. So, I mean, there were some delays, but the worst delays were for coaches. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that since we left the EU, we now have to, everybody has to get off the coach and go through and have their passport checked and stamped. So it is part of Brexit because we are now treated as a non-European country and the French are not treating us any differently.
How were their passports checked before Brexit, coach travellers?
You just throw it up at the window. Usually the coach driver would show it up at the window.
What, just his passport or all your passports?
But you didn't have to get off the bus.
Yeah, but you had to show a passport.
You had to show
because
a passport.
We're not part of Schengen.
No. You had
so
to show a
what's
passport.
changed? It's a process.
Or they would come
changed.
on. They'd come on and they'd check.
So why don't they come on now?
Because they are now, and you all know this, it's juxtaposed borders. So the government invited the French to put their border in England. Because otherwise you'd have the...
And that's effectively how it used to be.
Yes,
they had their checks here and we had our checks
there. But because
there.
everybody has now got to get off the bus...
But why do they have to get off the bus?
But the problem, Ben, is partly geographical, because you've got this massive traffic and, as you know, Dover is small. You know, there's no way you can expand.
But there's no need for them to come off the bus.
Well, there is if the French are going to check the passports and everybody has to go through passport control.
This comes squarely down, if I may use the expression, bloody-minded French.
No, it doesn't.
It absolutely does.
They're not treating us any differently to somebody coming from Australia.
They absolutely treat us in a way that we don't treat them. And the example, which is QED in my book, is if you arrive at Heathrow from an EU member state, you're allowed to go through the E-gates with your passport. You're treated exactly the same as a Canadian, and I can't remember if the US can do it, but certainly Canadians can, Australians can. They can go through the E-gates. If we go to France now, they won't let us go through the E-gates. It is
Do you mean
French...
the electronic gates?
Yeah, the E-gates, you know, where you put your passport on the machine.
Well, you don't have those down at Dover. And also...
No, but it's about the attitude of mind.
No, it's not.
It is. It's not to do with Brexit.
It is.
By the way, I think we're digressing because the specific delays at Dover this week had nothing to do with that.
Of course they do.
No, Doug, if you listen to the CEO of Dover, he said it was due to a 15% unpredicted, uplift in coaches arriving.
Which is utter nonsense.
And bad weather. But he's not a Brexiteer. He's actually a Remainer. Have you listened to some of the stuff he said in the past?
I have heard what the people from Dover Ports Authority
I suspect he's a Remainer. I don't want to.
But you know, the idea that somebody is suddenly going to go, oh, I've got an idea. Let's get 60 school kids, pop them on a coach, and let's go on a whim. All of these were
Are you
booking.
saying you know better than the CEO who's come out and said he had a surge in demand much higher than he was expecting? Are you because you're
and there was bad weather.
Yeah.
And of course there was bad weather.
There's nothing you can do about.
Yeah.
You can't do anything about bad weather. But
answer my question though, because the CEO
because the surge in demand is ridiculous because they know how many coaches they've got booked, how many passengers they've got booked. It's not like you can just turn up and go. So these coaches, particularly with school tour, will have been booked a long time ago. So the idea that all of a sudden there's a rush is ludicrous.
But my argument is if this was Brexit, it would be a systemic failure at the port all the time. The last time we had this was July last year. The time before that was 2018, when we were still members of the EU. And the time before that was 2016. And actually, I can remember all through my childhood, Dover always being backed up.
Well, Dover is backed up for the reason that I said, you know, you only need one glitch because there's nowhere for the traffic to go.
It's not Brexit.
But it is,
it's
Ben, because
bad organisation at Dover, arguably.
Longer to get through
it's not Brexit.
The checks.
It's not Brexit.
Why are we having the checks? Because we've had Brexit, which causes the checks.
No, because we had to have passport checks. We're not members of... We were never members of Schengen. We had to have passport checks.
Never had
so it
to
becomes
get out of the coach. You never had to get out of your car.
But there's no reason to get out of the coach now. It's just a matter of process. If the French desire to make the process extremely difficult for the Brits, which is basically their attitude to the United Kingdom, which is why I agree with Liz Truss when she was asked whether they're friend or foe.
You've got strange taste in women, may I say, Suella Braverman and Liz Truss.
Well, just because I agree with Liz Truss doesn't, you know, make me amorously attracted to her. But the point is, it's the French response.
No,
it's
I'm
not
sorry,
Brexit.
It's not.
And anyway, in this instant, I would argue I defer to Doug Bannister's better knowledge.
In November, when we have the new, much-delayed system, which will mean everybody has to be fingerprinted.
Well...
Yeah, so, right, let's just...
Yeah.
This fingerprinting thing, what do you think to this? The whole biometrics and all the rest of it? Because that is, you know, an after-effect of the Brexit vote, isn't it? The whole biometrics.
Well, I'm personally against it. I think it's over-interference in, you know, it's overkill. It's like, do you ever go to the States? You have to, you know, fingerprint...
But it's designed for airports where you are walking through, you know, one by one. You haven't got this problem of cars and traffic backing up, and that's the problem at Dover.
Look, there's no problem of any nature presented to French authorities by Brits going on holiday to France. None. It's not like we're sending illegal boats across the Channel to France or we're hiding illegal would-be migrants to France in our coaches. This is the French response to Brexit. We know what the French are like. Macron has made it clear repeatedly that he would frustrate any attempt for Brexit to be seen as a success.
But you can't...
This is the French. It's got nothing to do with the Brits. On our side of the border, No, it isn't, because I fly all the time. If I go to a European country, some are more welcoming than others. The French, in particular, are not welcoming. Heathrow is very welcoming to foreigners.
Well, but that's an airport.
I have got a question for you about all of this, but I'm going to pose it to you in just a second. But you at home, you're hearing both sides of this. Jo is resolute that she thinks it's Brexit, and Ben completely opposite. Do you think there's like a middle ground here, or are you with either side? Your thoughts, and I'll see you in 2. I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it.
like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight on GB News, Britain's news channel. So we are. Keeping me company is Joe Phillips, a political commentator, and Ben Habib, the CEO of First Property Group and a member of Reform Party. How many coach trips have you been on, Joe?
Recently, none.
Because that is the question that many people are asking me in my inbox, because what they're saying is, you're saying about getting off your coaches, my inbox is flooded with coach goers saying that they've always had to get off the coach.
Oh, well, the last time I went as a foot passenger last autumn, and so you get the little sort of shuttle bus from the terminal to the ferry, and we had to get off. But I mean, that was like a shuttle bus. That wasn't a coach. So apparently, I've always had to.
Well,
but it's taking longer.
You lot are having none of it. You're saying that you've always been asked to get off your coaches and that in your minds nothing has changed. What about this money? People are asking me, £33 million, apparently in 2020. It was proposed that we have like a double passport booth or something, and the UK government rejected it. Do you know anything about that?
I'm not aware of that proposal, the
because
£33 million proposal.
that is something that's coming through, that apparently the UK government turned down this kind of opportunity to double the passport booths. One of the things
Dover?
Apparently £33 million, double passport booths was rejected in 2020 by the UK government.
But you see, we've got Ebbsfleet International and Ashford International.
And they've shut down Ashford.
Completely. Well, and none of the Eurostar trains are now stopping at Ebbsfleet either. Yeah. So billions of pounds of public money were poured into both
hundreds of millions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. One of the things that gets me is when you hear like the CEO talking and saying, oh, you've got all these surges and all the rest of it. Brexit has not just crept up overnight and tapped people on the back of the shoulder and gone, hi there, I'm here.
Absolutely.
And part of your job as a CEO is appropriate staffing levels. So if you think and suggest, and it's the facts and all the rest of it, whatever, that processes have changed, I mean, goodness gracious me, you've had years now to plan for this. So what I would say is, rather than wandering around blaming the government for things, look inward into your own business and staff up your levels accordingly.
And processes.
But
just get process
but that's
right.
why I'm saying him blaming it on a sudden surge in demand is ridiculous. Because
No, but it makes sense.
No, but you're blaming it on Brexit, don't you?
No, I am blaming it on Brexit for the same reason that we've had all that time knowing that there would be more stringent
controls. So how is it the
controls.
fault of Brexit? So if, let's just say processes have changed, as I'm saying, this hasn't crept upon the CEO of this. He has known about this for years. So how is it the fault of Brexit process change as opposed to the guy responsible for staffing this?
Because Doug Bannister, or his predecessor, is not responsible for the checking of people's passports.
No, but if this was genuinely a Brexit issue, it wouldn't be one incident pre-Easter in 2023 and one instance in, I think it was July 2022 when we last had it. This would be something that would creep up all the time.
Well, and it will.
would be a systemic, permanent problem, but it isn't. We've had these kinds of problems at Dover historically.
Oh, we've had problems at Dover for all sorts
2018,
of reasons.
2016,
not least of all
2015.
because of strikes and things.
Yeah.
But we will have it again next weekend, Easter weekend and summer holidays.
Well, this is Easter traffic, yeah.
Yes, I know,
Yeah.
but some
We could talk about
people
this.
can't go until a bit later in the week.
We can talk, well, some people go on a staycation and go to Skegness in a caravan. Some people like
Bracing.
me. Yeah,
Skegness.
it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait. That's where I'm spending my Easter. Anyway, I've got to say, this whole Brexit conversation, Brexit is going to be blamed for years, if not decades to come. So you better get used to these kind of conversations because people literally will blame Brexit, everything, quite frankly, on Brexit that they can get away with. Anyway, Sadiq Khan, he wants the government to allow him to freeze private rents in the capital. Across the country, private rent has risen 4.7% to the year in February, and it's the highest it's been in 7 years. I'll come to you in a second because I know you've got a property company, so I'm interested in your thoughts, Ben. But Joe, do you support rent freezes as a principle?
I support controlled rent as a principle, but the reality is that they actually often cause worse problems. Now, I know we're not going to go down the Brexit route again, but lots of European countries...
I bet you would if you could.
Oh, I could?
I bet, yeah.
Yeah, I would. I think it's Brexit's fault that he hasn't made a fruit salad. That's probably the shortage
yeah,
of fruit.
I bet she's not even joking
Because
either.
I couldn't get the fruit.
Exactly.
That fruit. Do you know, all that fruit nonsense, don't wash with me, all that you can't get LD tomatoes. I'll blame it on those toilet paper panic buyers.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
them. I reckon what happened. Yeah, I do. I think you get, the media gets hold of it. It tells everyone it's shortage and people go off.
What are you going to do with all those bananas? They won't keep, and then we've all had enough of banana bread, if you ask me.
Anyway,
I
massively digress.
Yes. So rent control. So Spain has just introduced it. Lots of European capitals have had rent controls, and in New York, for sure, there's been controlled rents. But a lot of that has been related to people's long-term tenancies. So they're protected tenancies. To suddenly come in and bring in a rent control, as Sadiq Khan, it's not the first time he suggested it, will probably make a lot of landlords, and Ben will have a view on this much more informed than mine is, that a lot of landlords will probably say, well, actually, it's not worth me renting. They're paying more in their mortgage costs. There's a huge shortage of rented properties. There's an absolute dearth of social housing, particularly in London. And there needs to be something to be done to address that. But that means working with local authorities, it means working with planning authorities, it means making sure that you have affordable homes, rented properties, it means looking at second home ownership and all of those things. But to come in with something like, just rent controls, how would it operate without forcing the market into a complete meltdown?
But some people would say that what needs to happen is that the market is forced into some kind of significant change. I wouldn't call it a meltdown necessarily, but a significant change, because right now it's broken, and there is a disconnect between London and the rest of the country, Ben.
There is, yeah.
But a hard-working grafter, they really will struggle to go and get a decent property in London. Forget it, by the way. So something has got to change.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that have gone wrong. One of the things we haven't discussed is obviously the printing of money over the last 12 years, which has forced property prices up as debts got cheaper and cheaper and pulled it out of the range of working and middle-class people to be able to afford it. That's the underlying issue here with property in London. But the other thing that's changed is that planning restrictions have got more and more. Well, planning restrictions have increased and increased over the last 25 years. It used to be much easier to get planning permission to build something than it is now. And with that comes friction in the market, less new supply, and with less new supply, you have higher prices and higher rents. And what you don't do in order to fix a broken market is to regulate it again. We had regulated tenancies in this country, and they were abolished. I think Maggie abolished them, and then they were allowed to die out as people who were protected under the regulated tenancies died out. And the experience we had was, as you said, Joe, less properties developed because it's not lucrative for a developer to build something when he knows he can't make money out of it. So paradoxically, it damages the market, forces up prices. What we need is reduced planning constraints, greater availability of sites, more funding for developers, not for buyers, because that just fuels demand. And we need a relaxation of regulations across the board, reduced taxes. Sadiq Khan hasn't got a clue. By the way, he put up council taxes last year, 8%, this year 9%. He's doing more damage to the affordability of London homes than any property developer is. Sadiq Khan should be ashamed of himself. His policies are virtually, unquestionably, across the board, damaging to Londoners.
Well, if he's watching, Sadiq, he's certainly told you what he thinks, hasn't he? You tell me what you think. I know he's got an uncomfortable bottom, what can I say? Right, Sadiq, if you're watching, what do you reckon to what Ben Habib makes of you? Give me all your thoughts on those topics. Also, are you a car driver? Guess what? They are making it harder. I'm obsessed with this. I think there is a war on cars. Anyway, they're going to get rid of traditional pay and display meters. Do you think that is the right move? I'll see you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me, Joe Phillips, the political commentator, and Ben Habib, the CEO of First Property Group and a member of the Reform Party. Sean says yes, yes, yes to the rent cap. That is something that you've been looking forward to, but Karen says, I'm a landlord and I rent out 2 properties. The rent has stayed the same for 6 years. We are good landlords, says Karen. There is quite a surge of people that dislike landlords at the moment, don't they? Karen says, we use our properties for our pensions. Jeff, you've got hold of me as well. You did not like the comment that I just made about toilet roll hoarders during COVID. You're saying I'm not giving kind of credence to people that might have been stocking up on toilet roll because they had a medical condition, etc. He says, we're not all crazies. Yes, but Jeff, this is a bit I could never understand if you were one of said toilet roll buyers. COVID didn't even cause diarrhea. I don't mean to be graphic at this time of the night, but that wasn't a well-celebrated side effect of the thing, so I really didn't get it. I really didn't, and I do apologise if you're eating your tea tonight. Anyway, motorists in the UK are seeing pay and display meters disappear up and down the country with new mobile phone apps replacing them. Apparently, people are saying it's appalling. I've got to say, I do think this is a little bit of a war on cars, the next step, if you ask me, in a long road. Ben Habib.
Well, I mean, I'm delighted that you can book your parking on your phone. It's much easier, it's quicker. It used to be a real pain in the neck when you turned up to park a car and you didn't have the requisite number of 50p or £1 coins and you had to beg a local shop owner to switch £5 into, you know, 5 £1 coins or whatever it was. And the view I take, if I'm taking a kind of politically, you know, a broader, no, not politically, but a broader political position rather than my own convenience, is that if you've got a car, you probably have a mobile phone. And if you've got a mobile phone, you've probably got an app, the ability to download an app. And so I think it's a reasonable step forward. It's not disenfranchising any particular part of society by having these automated forms of payment. And I think it does make it easier. It means you can park your car, go to whatever it is you have to do, and if your car runs out, you get a notification, you can top it up. I think it's a step.
Well, apparently a poll said that more than half of over 65-year-olds do not like using these parking apps. Where do you stand on it?
Well, I don't dislike them. I just wish there was some uniformity, because I'm fed up with having umpteen blooming apps on my phone, you know, in the same city. Which is utterly ridiculous. And I think that's what people don't like. People, it's not so much about using it. They're frightened of downloading an app that, you know, we're told all the time about scammers and things like that, and it's asking you to put your bank details in and things like that. So I can understand people's misgivings. I think where local authorities do it, and wouldn't it be sensible if all the local authorities got together and did a bulk buy and actually chose to use the same parking app or whatever it is. But I do think there ought to be a little bit like the self-service checkouts in supermarkets, which I refuse to use. Just actually provide...
Why do you refuse to use a self-checkout?
Because it's putting people out of work, and I think that...
But what if there's only self-checkouts available? What do you do then? Put your food down in
That's how you make
protest.
the economy more productive. You know, we keep talking about our productivity as a country going down. You need self-checkouts. You need things to make the economy slicker.
And there are people standing around and they don't work either. The number of times that I've ever used them, that always something just bleating at me and, you know, you're in the wrong bagging area or something. But I just think it would be quite good to have an alternative and say to people, you know, there is a car park where you can use the old-fashioned system, even if it's not...
Patricia says, not only is all this a war on cars, it's discrimination to the elderly. She says... I don't want to carry my phone everywhere I go. Oh, Pat, you're not one of those people, are you, that has a mobile phone.
Leaves it at
My
home.
mum's partner's like this, has a mobile phone and leaves it at home. What is the point in having a mobile phone? I've never,
used to leave it in the car.
The clue's in the name, mobile phone.
I've got to say as well on the Brexit thing, there's no division with you lot. You're quite binary in your opinion. Many of you saying it is not Brexit to blame. Pack it in, blaming it for everything. Cheers to that, that's what I say. Look at the time, everyone. It flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? And that is all I've got time for. But Clive, he's popped in at the end. I'm 68 and I love parking apps. Don't put us all in the same brush as oldies, he says. Anyway, look, speaking of oldies, that's all I've got time for. It's Nigel Farage up next. Have a good one.
Hello again, I'm Stephen Keats and this is your latest Met Office forecast. And after a lovely day through Monday, many places will see a dry and fairly clear night with a widespread frost developing underneath those clear skies. That is away from the far northwest, where this weather system will be bringing thicker cloud and some bits and pieces of light rain and drizzle to the far west of Northern Ireland, westernmost parts of Scotland. Here, not turning too cold with a bit more breeze and the cloud cover, so temperatures 4 or 5 degrees, but elsewhere under clearing skies, temperatures falling away quite sharply after sunset, and there'll be a widespread frost to take us into Tuesday morning. So it certainly will be a cold start, might just scrape a few cars first thing Tuesday morning, but those temperatures coming up quite smartly underneath the strong April sunshine. And for much of England and Wales, it will be another predominantly sunny day. Although further west across parts of England and Wales, as well as the southern and eastern Scotland, those blue skies have been replaced by some hazier conditions, some high-level clouds spilling in. Cloudy for Northern Ireland and the far west of Scotland, but rainfall amounts quite small. And for most of us, it will be a relatively warm day after that chilly start.